allowing me to come tonight. I am, by all accounts, the prettiest candidate on the ballot for the United States Senate this year. I do live in Johnstown, and just to give you a little bit of information about myself first, my husband and I have been married for, it'll be 31 years in June. He's my first and present husband. Together we have 6 children. They are all girls except for 5. It's an IQ joke. How fast did you get it? They range in age from 27 to 15. So I have a 27-year-old architect who recently got married, a 23-year-old daughter who's a classical ballerina, a 22-year-old son who is a petty officer in the Navy. He's in the nuclear program. I will tell you we're a divided house. I'm the daughter of an Army veteran, and I have a son in the Navy. So there are some conversations that happen in our house, especially around that Army-Navy gate. He's one of the people that runs the nuclear reactors. He's finishing his certification in New York, and last week he actually ran a reactor for the first time, and you notice nothing blew up. So it was a very successful week. I have one that's going to turn 21 on Saturday. He's an opera singer. I have an 18-year-old student at Widener University who is in electrical engineering, and a 15-year-old sophomore in high school. My 1, 3, and 5 are my math and science guys. They are tone deaf. 2, 4, and 6 are my musical guys, and they do not do math. So they're either all left-brained or all right-brained in my house. I am by trade originally a teacher. I have taught both special ed and elementary ed, and I've taught everything from preschool through college. I now own a business. I'm a published author. I actually had a television show in Washington, D.C. I worked with the Free Congress Foundation, so I was one of the people that interviewed senators and congressmen back in the 90s, which was a little bit different to do. I want to talk to you this year about America. And I think it's important that we think through who we were so that we can decide who we want to be. Now, in all the days leading up to the revolution and before the historic meetings in Philadelphia, there was a lot of talk about taxation without representation being tyranny. But when they came together in Philadelphia on those hot July days and wrote a document that was the original American document, they didn't talk about taxation. Why did they do that? Why did they leave taxation behind? Because they understood that the taxing policies of a government flow from the philosophy and structure of that government. If a government is correct in its philosophy and structure, its economics will follow that. But if a government is wrong in its philosophy and structure, then the taxing policies will be wrong as well. If you only talk about taxes, you're only talking about symptoms. That's like if you came to the hospital with pneumonia. You should never sit in the front. I use you as examples. If you came to the hospital with pneumonia and I said, I'm going to give you cough medicine but no penicillin, you won't cough all the way to the coffin. That's not curing you. And our forefathers understood that. So what did they talk about? They began by acknowledging that there is an authority higher than the government. Because if there is no creator, you are not endowed. That first premise is under attack today, with the government that is insanely hostile to anything religious. We all heard about the people in Florida, the principal and the athletic director who got threatened with jail time because they had the audacity to pray at a public event. These are the same jails that are letting murderers out because they're overcrowded. To make room for people who pray? Something is fundamentally wrong in this picture. When government becomes insanely hostile to religion, it is always a sign of tyranny. Because in a tyranny, the government sees God as a competitor and not the boss. If we want to preserve the republic that we were given, we need to restore time. We need to be willing to stand up and begin the conversation with the fact that the first authority is the divine authority, no matter how you personally believe. Now, they moved from that into talking about what what the endowed rights are.
Can you get the tripod?
And they put them in order. Remember, every single word of that document, every comma, was debated and argued about. So not one piece of it is accidental. The order of those fundamental rights matters. It's important. The first is life. Because if any government can tell you that you don't have a right to your own existence, you don't have any rights. You are just property.
Troy.
It should scare everybody that the same government in Washington that does not think that every person has an inalienable right to their existence, to life, does think that that government has the right to decide who gets what health care, under what condition, at what cost.
Amen.
That should scare everybody. Now, unfortunately today, nationally and in some parts of the Republican Party, there is a move to walk away from the social issues because they're divisive. We don't really want to talk about that. We just want to talk about money because it's safe. It is the most fundamental of your rights. It's funny, the press, if they know one thing about me, they know that I'm pro-life. And when I do interviews, I walk in, sit down, and they say, okay, I need to ask this question. Are you still pro-life? Yes. Okay, we'll move on, because if you changed your mind, that would be a story. Why do they start there? Because everybody knows it's the fundamental right. So when I say I'm pro-life, I am pro-life without exception, without compromise, without apology, and without silence. I am not. The second of your enumerated rights is liberty. That right has some pieces to it, and we need to kind of break it apart. The first part of liberty is the idea that everyone is equal before the law, based on your behavior. No matter how old you are, or what sex you are, or what ethnic group you come from, or where you were born. That's why things like illegal immigration are wrong. Because if we say that everyone isn't equal before the bar of the law, then we negate the reason why everybody wants to come here in the first place. You know, if I were a mother living in Mexico, I'd want to come here too. I get that. But she wants to come here because in this country you have the opportunity to be who you are based on how you behave. Because we're all equal before the law. If we break that rule, we basically negate the very reason that makes us the place that everybody wants to go. So you can't break the foundation of who you are and keep who you are. That's why illegal immigration is wrong. It undermines the fabric of law upon which freedom is built. Liberty also requires sovereignty, our ability to control our destiny in the international arena, meaning that we need to have the right to protect the safeguards of the American Constitution when we talk, whether it's in the United Nations, which really, don't you think it's time for somebody else to host than I do? Whether it's in the United Nations,
I think it's time they don't exist anymore.
Other international forum. Americans need the right to protect all of what America is. And no government in Washington, by executive order, should be allowed to give it away. That undermines liberty as well. The third piece of liberty is a lot more personal. That's your private right to protect your life and your property from aggression, whether that aggression comes from a criminal or from the government. That's the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment makes all the rest of it real. Now, there have been lots of studies about what happened, for example, in England when they didn't have gun control and then they did have gun control. And all the studies, most of them, focused on the crime rates. We're not even going to talk about this. The most telling study was when they asked the British citizens, how did the government respond to you before gun control or after gun control? And the Brits themselves said, before gun control, the government asked us.